Welcome, everyone, to episode 8 of the Winged Eagle podcast. Happy Saturday to one and all. I don't think I'm ever going to come up here and say, welcome to a Winged Eagle podcast where we have nothing to talk about. We have got a ridiculously loaded episode this week, and I think that's going to be the norm going forward because we have a lot of wrestling shows every week. I've got 4 or 5 wrestling shows alone to discuss, plus a fallout from Hell in the Cell, plus the draft that kicked off last night on Smackdown and continues 2 days from now on Monday Night Raw. We've got news tidbits to get into. We've got ratings news. We've got all sorts of stuff just to basically casually discuss. It took me just a couple of hours alone just to kind of organize my notes and get them in the order that I wanted to discuss things because there's literally just tons of stuff going on. I'm assuming I can be seen and heard. I look good over here. And yeah, I'm going to give everybody a quick what's up, and then we're going to kind of dive right into everything, saying hello to everybody that is in the chat right now. It is a Saturday afternoon, which will be the norm going forward on this podcast just because of the way the wrestling shows are spaced out. I was not here this past Saturday because I attended the first Smackdown on Fox in LA, and I wasn't able to get back here and do a Winged Eagle last Saturday. So we had a week off. We're back this week. We have a ton of stuff to get into because I've only been up here for Hell in the Cell the night or after the pay-per-view last Sunday to do a quick review on that, and I was up here live reacting to Raw, and that's all you've really seen of me except for my cameo on Brian Zane's Wrestling with Regret channel. So I've got a lot of notes, and we've got a lot of stuff to get into, and we're just going to kind of go through it here one at a time. Before we do that, though, I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Good to see you guys in here. About 100 folks in here right now. Not horrible for a Saturday afternoon. This audio will be available shortly after this podcast wraps up. It will not be several hours like normal, so you can head over to my website, GoodMicWorkCommentaries.com, maybe in an hour or two after the podcast, and that audio should be available for download over there. In the meantime, make sure you smash that thumbs up button, and make sure you subscribe if you have not yet already. I had a lot of new subscribers jump on the channel this week because of my featuring on Wrestling with Regret, so if you're coming over from there and just discovering me for the first time, welcome. I promise I don't suck. Just give me a chance, and I promise you'll like it over here. And I'm up here every Monday night reacting to Raw, and that's coming up in 2 days with the draft kind of wrapping up. And we'll talk about the draft and how it was all structured last night and the monumental fuck-up that WWE had actually releasing the draft order by accident. And they have now changed Monday night's draft pool to an alphabetical listing. So I don't know, it might be too little too late there, but just things go from bad to worse in that damn company. As good as things seem to be on the surface with the TV deals and Saudi Arabia and how big WWE is, internally, it's just like one massive fuck up after another. And it's not been a good week for WWE when you date back to all the way, or date back to last Sunday after Hell in the Cell and that whole mess, a ridiculously horrible Monday Night Raw, which we will spend very little time on later on. And, the other random mistakes they made. It seems like the only thing WWE is really doing right now is NXT. But in terms of my notes, let me pull my notes up here. I didn't want them right in my face at first. I've got some wrestling news to get into as well, but I think it's not a lot of wrestling news. So basically, I'm just going to discuss a little bit of that as we go through here because the news and notes I have in terms of news is not very much. Also, for those of you that are participating in the chat like normal for these Winged Eagle podcasts, if you send a super chat, I will get to it. I just might not see it right away. So there's no need to write in the chat, you missed my super chat or you forgot or anything like that. I'm going to kind of save them and go back and answer several at a time because I'm trying to keep this audio listenable for people that are checking it out after the fact. So I appreciate all of the participation. I appreciate the donations and all of that. You guys are the best. But unlike Monday Night Raws, I'm going to handle the super chats a little bit differently on the podcast. Just want to let you guys know so you don't think I'm ignoring you. I also want to give a shout out to flagsports.com. This week released the most watched wrestling YouTube channels in history, and GoodMicWork Commentaries made the list at number 108, so we did not crack the top 100, but the entire list of like 250 channels or whatever, those include like WWE and Impact and the big heavy hitters and stuff. So the fact that we made the list at all was pretty cool. And I know we should be a lot higher because they do it by overall views, which I think I have around 6 million on my channel, but I've deleted about 3 or 4 million. So really I've got about 10, maybe even 11 million views total in my channel. But I've gotten things taken down over the years by WWE. All of my live streams I take down right away. That's a couple of million views right there. and my first 100 videos are no longer on the channel. So in total, somewhere around 3 or 4 million views I've deleted off of the channel. So we actually should be ranked a lot higher than 108, but I'll take it. And very cool, a little nod for the channel there. You know, we're not the best, but we're at least on the list. And when you look at some of the names that I'm ahead of, not too shabby. So kind of cool little accomplishment there for the channel. And we are on our way to 30,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So like I said, click that sub button. Why don't we just really quickly start with Hell in the Cell? I'm not going to talk about Hell in the Cell because I did a full review on it after the pay-per-view last Sunday. I did not hold back my outrage. You know, I think for once, people that want to be angry, people that want to yell and scream and be outraged at WWE have a heck of a gripe with this pay-per-view. This was a ridiculous finish that absolutely murdered several things in WWE. Murdered your babyface champion in Seth Rollins if he wasn't already up shit's creek as it was. It completely destroyed the concept of Hell in the Cell with that ridiculous finish. This pay-per-view was so in the way, and I think that Hell in the Cell might have been on the calendar prior to SmackDown moving to Fox. So when that happened, and October 4th was the date, it kind of made that the Go Home Hell in the Cell show. And as of Saturday, prior to the show, there was only 4 matches announced. And they announced over 50% of the card. Probably about 60, 70% of the card was announced in one tweet. And then another match or two was tacked on during the kickoff show. They basically just forgot or didn't care about booking the pay-per-view. They figured, well, it doesn't matter. The fans are going to tune in no matter what we do. Now, they had a hell of a main event with The Fiend versus Seth Rollins, but like I was saying all along, I'm like, look, if they don't plan to put the belt on The Fiend, I'd rather not have them do this match, because if you don't put the belt on him, it's going to be a disappointment for a lot of fans, and boy, was that an understatement. I can't believe they did that for the second year in a row, because Strowman and Roman went to like a non-finish the year before. So now they're going to pull this shit again in the very structure that they claim is the most demonic and satanic and vicious and brutal structure in all of WWE. No one can get in, no one can get out. There must be a winner. Face your fears kind of thing inside the cell. And then they do a non-finish 2 years in a row. It's bad enough you already have this pay-per-view. And excuse me while I'm continuing my rant on Hell in the Cell, but I'm still not over it. It's bad enough that you have a pay-per-view like Hell in the Cell that's set on the calendar that makes you and books yourself into a corner where you have to have Hell in the Cell matches in the month of October, instead of scrapping and shit-canning the whole stupid pay-per-view concept and saving your Hell in the Cells for when you need them. What the hell is wrong with having a Hell in the Cell at SummerSlam or WrestleMania or any other pay-per-view during the year? These gimmick pay-per-views suck. I can tolerate Money in the Bank because those have been fun, but we do not need TLC. We sure as shit do not need Elimination Chamber. And we sure as shit don't need Hell in the Cell. Or as I like to call it, Hell in Mattel. Because they've painted that damn thing bright-ass red, which absolutely burns my retinas out. And you can't see shit through it. It looks stupid. And now for 2 years in a row, they've murdered this concept. And I think the Hell in the Cell is dead. I think the Hell in the Cell should go away for 5 years and make a return. Not the pay-per-view, the match. That's how bad they fucked it up. But they won't do anything. Next year during October, we'll be right back to that Hell in the Cell so they can sell more of them damn toys or, you know, do whatever marketing they need to do with that silly pay-per-view. But who's going to take it seriously next year? You know, the fans have very short memories. Everyone's fickle. So by the time we get to next October, nobody's probably going to remember. Hell, I almost forgot that they had a non-finish the year before. So I'm sure it won't matter a year from now, but it certainly doesn't make the match look good when you see how it started with Shawn and Taker and Mick Foley diving off the cell. How come there was nobody stopping the match during that? When Mick Foley base jumped off the top of the cell in 1998. As far as I was concerned, he was dead. As God is my witness, he is broken in half, remember? I think if you're broken in half, the ref should stop the match. It doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense, and really the finish made sense for WWE because they needed to get out of that deal without putting the belt on Bray for some reason. I thought The Fiend would be a great champion, and I thought The Fiend was going to be the primary focus and the main character of Monday Night Raw. Boy, did I turn out to be wrong, because Bray wound up on SmackDown in the draft. So I understand that if they had future plans for Wyatt, like him going to SmackDown, Seth Rollins staying on Raw, maybe putting the Universal title on Bray wasn't going to work out there, fine, fair enough. Then don't make the fucking match, you idiots. Like, it's that simple. You know, I just still cannot believe that they would do a finish like that and an outcome like that they know is going to piss off the audience. And now they've put in their babyface champion, who already isn't really that beloved by the babyface audience. He's already kind of, climbing uphill with that as it is, because a lot of people are on Seth Rollins' case. He's not a great babyface champion. Everybody loves Seth Rollins, when he won the title in 2015 and when he was a heel, but now he's getting that Roman Reigns treatment. He's got 2 victories over Brock. He's winning all the time. His promos aren't very good. He's mouthing off on social media. He's kind of getting that heat. And all of that Roman transfer, all the Cena hate, the transfer to Roman, is now being transferred to Seth. It's just one after another. After Seth, it'll be transferred to someone else. It's no different. But he's got all that working against him now, and then WWE puts him in this situation where he's working his ass off, because like Seth Rollins or not, he was in a Hell in a Cell match. There were, aside from the finish, some pretty cool spots in that match. Some pretty innovative stuff. It had the dim red light, which I don't really like. Cain did that when he first came in for the first few months there, and I didn't really like it because it's just hard to see, and plus I don't really like the color red. So for me, it's just kind of annoying, but the match itself was hard-hitting, and the guys were putting in work, and Seth was working his ass off in there, and to see the company that he works for have to put him in this situation to where he's got to kill himself, and as a babyface, he's being booed and shit on by the audience. There's that clip that was floating around social media after the show. Seth is still at ringside, and the fans are saying, "It's bad booking, Seth. It's bad booking." What the fuck does Seth have to do with the booking? He's just the champion going out there wrestling matches like they're telling him to do. And the fans are shitting on him. And he kind of looked over at the fans, and I kind of do too. I understand their frustration, but if I was in the audience, as pissed off as I was, I would in no way be flinging any shit on Seth Rollins. I just think that's so disrespectful, immature, and it's misguided anger. Direct your complaints where they belong. Don't just start making shit up out of thin air. "Oh, Seth, you suck." No, Seth doesn't suck. There was a time when you were sucking Seth's dick. We all were. So you got to just be realistic with the argument. So I don't think Seth deserved the shit that was heaped on him by the fans. I think WWE does for the stupid decision that this was and how it did not do him any favors. Now I feel like you should turn Seth heel. He might just have to do a Bayley type of thing where he tells the fans to screw off or whatever. And just turn heel now, because WWE's made it that way. They made a similar mistake. Well, not similar, but it kind of reminds me of when they did the thing at WrestleMania 11 with Shawn and Diesel. And Vince kind of, in his head, thought it was going to go one way, and the wrestlers were like, "No, Vince, you don't understand. If you do this, you're going to turn Shawn babyface." And that's exactly what happened. And then they had no choice but to go in that direction. So now with Seth Rollins, who might be the biggest heel in the company now by default just because of the stupid finish we got at Hell in a Cell, he's in a hell of a spot here too. And what'd they do? They left him off of Monday Night Raw. They completely left him off of the show, didn't even bring up the main event of the previous night's pay-per-view until 2 hours into the show? They knew they fucked up, and they deserved it. They deserved those AEW chants. They deserved those refund chants. They deserved those bullshit chants. Everything that they got, they deserved. And at the end of the day, I don't think they really cared. WWE has this arrogance about them, and this weird sort of resentment, I feel like, towards the fans a lot of times, where they laugh at the fact that they can do whatever they want, piss on everyone's face, and everybody's just going to keep coming back and watching more. And you got the canceled WWE Network hashtag trending again, which I think is silly. WWE could give me 12 Hell in a Cell pay-per-views in a row, and I still would not cancel my network because it's well worth the $9.99 just for the content that they have on there. So I think we need new threats. These don't scare WWE. There's never going, no matter how bad a pay-per-view is, there's never going to be a significant enough drop-off in the network subscriptions. You might get that, few thousand angry people that cancel, but it's not going to be enough numbers to where WWE's even going to feel it. And most people that I've seen on the internet or on YouTube in previous years that have pulled this, "I'm going to cancel my network" shit, they're back. They're full of shit just like everybody else is. So I think us as fans look foolish when we say we're canceling our network, when in the end, WWE's really not losing very many subscriptions. So I think we need different ways to communicate our displeasure. Not watching TV would be a good one, because WWE is very focused on ratings right now, and that includes NXT. So if you really want to stick it to them, stop watching NXT. That way AEW can continue plowing their asses down, and maybe that'll make WWE take notice. I don't know. I don't know what you can do as fans to really get the WWE to care, because sometimes it just feels like they just don't. They resent us. They want to give us the opposite of what we want, in most cases it seems like, And when they do something like, oh, I don't know, forget to book a pay-per-view, they don't even seem very concerned about it. The fans will tune in. Forget that we have 4 matches on a 3.5-hour show announced. We'll just tweet the rest of the card, and they'll tune in. And the pay-per-view suffered for it. And WWE's been in positions before where they've had a pay-per-view that on paper hasn't looked very good or has been underwhelming or one that maybe I'm not interested in at all. Stomping Grounds comes to mind. And then you get to the show and the talent just busts ass. And they make it worth it. And they make it a fun night of wrestling despite the inconsistent, fucked up booking with holes all through it that just doesn't make any sense. So most times, in a lot of cases, the talent can come through, but I don't think there was any helping or any saving that pay-per-view. It was just too many cold matches thrown together with very little build, some none at all, and some of the matches, the combatants didn't have any issue with each other whatsoever. So it was a bad pay-per-view, and they followed it up with an even worse Monday Night Raw the next night. I'm not going to spend too much time on this either, because the problem with Raw now is that you had the draft coming up on Friday. So you had a terrible pay-per-view the night before. WWE couldn't even really do anything drastically creative on Monday Night Raw because you had the draft. So it's not like you can launch any brand new storylines or throw a big swerve or a big angle or a big title change at us because you kind of already have plans in place for this draft going forward. So now we found ourselves in the situation where the night after Hell in a Cell, we had a Monday Night Raw that was in the way. We had a Monday Night Raw that did not need to be there. We had a Monday Night Raw that we could have done without. We needed nothing on Monday Night Raw. Nothing that they gave us was necessary. Nothing really blew anything off. Nothing gave us any closure on anything at all. It was just a show that was there that they had to put on because it was on the calendar. And it was in a terrible spot, after Hell in the Cell and with Smackdown coming up on Friday. So the scheduling has been a mess with WWE because when SmackDown moved to Fox, it screwed everything up. And now that made that their focus, bringing in big names like Tyson Fury and Cain Velasquez. And now you got the big Saudi Arabia show coming up on the 31st that they're promoting the shit out of. It's like things move so fast for WWE, they're behind. They can't keep up creatively with the speed of the business. That's why AEW might be in such a good spot right now because they only have 1 2-hour show a week to worry about. They're not running house shows. They're not doing a whole lot other than that Dynamite show, which means they have plenty of time to write compelling, coherent, cohesive storylines every week, and they can start writing, unlike WWE, who's probably going to write Monday's Raw script lunchtime on Monday, AEW's probably already got next week's written. And that's why we might see some better long-term booking over there and just storylines that are followed through with, which seems like such a huge problem in WWE. I mean, the only storyline we really got on Raw was that ridiculous shit with Lashley and Lana and Rusev, which they closed the previous week with. It went off the air. The season premiere of Monday Night Raw went off the air with that ridiculous angle. And by the way, as soon as I'm done talking about Monday Night Raw, I'm going to go over to the chat and answer the several super chats that I see in here from Rocksmith, Chris, Dustin, Austin, and probably some others. So I have seen those, and I will get back to them. Excuse me. But the Lashley and Lana and Rusev stuff was such a weird and strange and unnecessary and uninteresting swerve, to be honest. We've already seen WWE force Lana and Rusev to split up once. Sometimes I just don't know if they treat their wrestlers as bad as they treat the fans. They're just going to split them up to fuck with them. We know they've been in the doghouse a couple of times. Rusev got in trouble for cutting his hair. Then they got in trouble for living their lives. 2 independent contractors decide to get engaged and decide to tell people about it, and WWE's pissed and for more or less punish them for it. This company, man. This fucking company. So now they're in another situation, which I can't tell if it's a push or a demotion. What the hell's going on here? At least it gives Rusev something to do. There was a time when we thought this guy could be on the top of the card. There was another time when we thought this guy could be huge if he could get the hell out of WWE. But he's still there. And now they put him in this ridiculous angle with Lashley. And I don't know if they're even going to wind up on the same brands. I'm assuming they are. WWE would not start the storyline if they're going to split them up in the draft. That would be stupid. And if WWE were to split Lana and Rusev up on separate brands just to mess with them some more, maybe I will cancel my WWE network. But Lashley has been drafted over to SmackDown. I think Rusev is in the pool on Monday, and Lana is not listed in the pool at all. So I don't even know what's going on there. So you have the silly ending to the Raw the previous week. Raw opens this past Monday with Rusev in the ring brawling with Randy Orton and Baron Corbin, I think. And then they do the classic hotel room skit. Lashley comes up on the Tron. He's in the hotel room with Lana. She's dressed sexy. How many hotel room skits have we seen? I remember Dean Malenko and Lita. I remember Val Venus and Terry Runnels. I remember Brian Pillman and Terry Runnels. Mae Young, Mark Henry, Shane Douglas, Tori Wilson, and of course, probably the most memorable and the sexiest hotel room skit of all was Al Snow and the Big Boss Man, by far. Still arouses me thinking about that. But yeah, we've seen, that's not even that original. We've just seen the hotel room stuff before. So they're doing that, and then they're making out, and it was so awkward the week before when they're making out on the stage. And Rusev, he tried, you saw him on Monday Night Raw, he's trying to cry. He even knows how stupid this is. You know, he just, I don't know. I don't know Rusev and Lana personally. And WWE's had a history of doing this with married couples, making them have romantic relationships with other people. We've seen Vince himself do this, sticking his tongue all the way down Trish's throat in front of his wife. I don't know if I could go for that. I don't know if I could sit there and watch that. I'm sure Lana and Rusev are comfortable with themselves, and Rusev doesn't care if she makes out with another guy or whatever, but the whole thing is weird. And sometimes I just wonder, when you think about the spitefulness that WWE's been known to have, you wonder if they do this shit on purpose, and sometimes I think that they do. But wherever this winds up, I don't know. I mean, is Rusev going to get revenge and beat Lashley, and then what? You know, then Lana is still with him. They've stuck Lashley now with somebody else. First Leo Rush, now he's got Lana. I don't know if it's going to do anything for him or not. I don't think so. I'm not optimistic about this at all, that that's going to do anything to elevate Rusev, Lana, or Lashley. I think they're all going to wind up probably in the same position when this is all said and done. And when or if they will ever put Rusev and Lana back together. So that whole thing went down. The only kind of, well, I guess there were a few matches of significance on Raw. I should take that back. I mean, we did have the last woman standing match between Natalya and Lacey Evans. Now, Lacey just beat the shit out of Natalya. As far as I was concerned, it was a squash. Because you guys that were here with me on Monday night, we were laughing. How many 9 counts did Natty have? 6 or 7? Lacey just beat the piss out of her for 15 solid minutes. Referee counted Natty down to 9. I know I counted up to 6. It might have gone up to 7. And she got up every time at the count of 1. The whole thing led to a big spot on the stage where she actually powerbombed Lacey off the stage through a perfectly pre-cut gimmick table. Lacey lands right through it, does not answer the 10 count, and Natalya actually wins the match despite getting the crap beaten out of her, you know, throughout the entire thing. So that situation does appear to be blown off because I think Lacey and Natty wound up on separate brands on Friday. So that issue is finally done between the two. We also had the Viking Raiders defeating Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler. This was a non-title match, and I called it on Raw. I'm like, well, Viking Raiders really haven't lost yet, you know, or lost clean. So they're going to win this, especially when it's a non-title match. You know they're going to win this match in order to earn a title shot, and that's exactly what happened. They beat Roode and Ziggler in the match. They wound up doing one of those dark, eerie backstage promos later on where they challenged Roode and Ziggler for the titles this Monday on Raw. And I said on the stream, I'm like, well, doesn't that spoil the draft? If the Viking Raiders are challenging for the Raw Tag Team titles next week on Raw, but the draft starts this Friday, doesn't that tell you that the Raiders are going to wind up on Raw? Because what if they get drafted to SmackDown? Do they still come to Raw and challenge for the tag team? You see how confusing this is? So as far as I was concerned, I'm like, they're on Raw, and that's exactly what happened on Friday during the draft. They got drafted to Monday Night Raw. And considering the run that they've been on, I feel like they've been used a little bit better in recent weeks. The whole thing started so bad, and the gimmick is weird, and they're not even one of my favorite teams, but their matches are good, and their matches are exciting, and WWE has put them in some big situations recently. They've won some big matches. They've been involved in some main events, and I pointed out several times that they had the beer bash with Austin in Madison Square Garden a few weeks back, which has got, you know, you just don't put any jabroni in those situations with Stone Cold. So the fact that are they undefeated? I feel like they are on the main roster, aside from maybe a DQ loss or something. They haven't been beaten yet, basically. So I don't see that changing. Even though Roode and Ziggler are kind of new champions, I think the Viking Raiders are going to win the belts on Monday. I just have that feeling. And they also look like they finally remembered that Aleister Black is on the roster as well. He had a couple of backstage studio type of promos where he's demanding competition, demanding to fight someone. He was in a full dress suit during the first one, and then they cut back to him later on, and now he's got his shirt off, and he's saying, I'm just going to go to the ring and beat the shit out of somebody. That somebody turned out to be the Bollywood boys. The Singh brothers have resurfaced, dressed insane like they used to be back in NXT, and Aleister Black just came down to the ring and killed both of them and picked up the win. I actually think it was a match. And we also had the Kabuki Warriors defeating Becky Lynch and Charlotte. So all the champions were in the ring at the same time. Tag champs, Raw and SmackDown Women's champs in a tag. Kabuki Warriors won. Asuka hit the green mist on Becky, allowing Kairi Sane to roll her up and get the pin. And that's a pretty big victory for the Kabukis after winning the titles the night before. And I'm glad that they're doing something with Asuka and Kairi Sane. I'm glad that they put the belt on the Kabuki Warriors. I'm glad that they have appeared to turn heel with Asuka using the green mist and doing a little bit of a twist there. I would like to see maybe in the future, maybe Asuka just green mists Kairi Sane in the middle of a match. Maybe as they're still champions and Asuka doesn't want to be champions anymore and she spits and turns on her and they lose the belts and then Asuka goes off on her own or something. I'd like to see the team split up that way. I'd like to see them never drop the belts legit. I'd like to see Asuka like turn on her own teammate. You know, because we've seen Asuka seems a little more heel than Kairi so far with what they've been doing. So maybe you can do it that way to really kind of launch Asuka again, but I think I need to give up on WWE actually doing something with her. But at least, you know, she's doing the throwback mist and, you know, they're actually, much like Aleister Black, remembering that these great wrestlers are indeed on the roster. And then I don't even want to talk about it because we're going to talk about it more here in a minute when we discuss the press conference. But Raw closed out with that horrific Tyson Fury, Braun Strowman segment. It's not Tyson and Austin. It's not even close. It's not even Mayweather and Big Show. I have very little interest in this. I don't have much interest in MMA or boxing, period, but I got to admit, Cain Velasquez and Brock gets me curious. This shit I don't care at all about. I don't know what this match is going to look like in Saudi Arabia. It's going to be pretty bad. I don't know who's winning and if WWE's going to... if Strowman and Brock are both going to take losses at the show. I'm not even sure how this is going to be booked yet. Should be interesting to kind of discuss that as we go through the next couple of weeks here. So that was pretty much your Raw in a nutshell, and it was just a terrible show, like I said, that was in the way and that didn't need to be there. Before we move on to Wednesday's festivities, I'm not going to talk too much about AEW Dynamite and NXT because I did a big video on that already, but we will briefly touch on it. Then we'll move into the press conference. Then we'll move into SmackDown and talk about the draft and where everybody landed. And then we'll talk about NWA Power as well, which I checked out the entire episode on Tuesday. But let me cruise back over here to the chat real quick, and I'm going to answer some of these super chats real quick and knock these out. First one comes from Rock Smith 1988. Thank you for the $2, dude. The review with Brian Sane was great. Thank you, and more to thank you. More to come. More to come if we're ever in the same city. He just happened to be here vacationing with his family, so he hit me up and thought we should do something together. We've been meaning to meet for a while. So it was cool. I had him right over here to my place. We watched both shows back to back, and we sat right here and reviewed them both on his channel. So very cool. I think that's good for the community to see, you know, some of their favorites kind of getting together. I like to see that, you know, with when I see people that I enjoy. So, you know, it's always good and fun to do that, and had a great time with him. Chris Ludecki, thanks, dude, for the $5. Good to see you in here as well again. Do you think Swagger can be AEW's version of Scott Steiner from 2000 with his real wrestling credentials and size? Oh, if I'm comparing Swagger to anybody, I'm not comparing him to 2000 Scott Steiner. I see what you mean about like maybe his collegiate wrestling stuff and all of that, but I think of Swagger closely related to more of a Brock than a Steiner. I don't know. And Swagger, I don't know if he's capable of cutting those gnarly-ass promos that Scott Steiner used to cut. I mean, everything was always just about freaks and bitches and oh my God. So I can't really see Swagger being in that type of character, but I'd like to see Swagger kind of be the quiet giant, you know, the muscle, you know, the guy that's just a stone cold badass killer kind of thing. You know, he's got that blank stare on his face and he looks, you know, real tough. He doesn't seem over the top and charismatic and as flamboyant as Scott Steiner was around 2000. But I see what you mean though about the like the legit wrestling credentials and stuff. Dustin Eaton, man, thanks for the $5, dude. Good to see you in here as well. After Hell in the Cell, would you agree that December to Dismember is no longer the worst WWE pay-per-view. I'm still going December to dismember. Hell in the Cell was bad, but really it was bad because of that finish. Had Bray Wyatt won the title, we would have said it was a great pay-per-view. You know it's true. So the finish was, which speaks volumes to the shitty finish that was, because the finish single-handedly made that a bad pay-per-view. You know, it already was a mess with the booking the entire thing via tweet, but I thought the matches were okay enough that if we would have gotten that interesting outcome in the main event, maybe they would have put the belt on Bray Wyatt, that would have been the focal point. We would have been talking about that. We would have forgotten all about WWE's tweeting the entire card. You know, we would have forgot all about, you know, the mess that they made of everything else. We would have been like, holy shit, they put the belt on Bray Wyatt. He beat the guy that's, you know, had 2 clean victories over Brock and has been on a roll ever since he won the title. He beat their top star right now. He beat their new Roman Reigns. Had that happened, I don't know if we would have even really cared about calling it the worst card of all time. So the finish is what made it bad. But I don't know if I'm putting it over December to dismember. It's close. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely close. But I don't know. I'm still going December. And I think finally that was my last. No, I got a couple more left. A few more left, actually. Austin Kinkle, thank you for the $5, dude, as well. I've noticed a pattern with these Saudi shows. Raw and SmackDown get 20 times worse than usual when building towards those shows. It's like they don't even try. Well, yeah, because most of the time, I know we've seen some title changes last year when Roman had to relinquish the title. They kind of forced themselves into one there. But for the most part, I think a lot of these shows are just kind of glorified house shows. Nothing crazy is going to happen at these shows for the most part. They just want to give the Saudi Arabian audience a big, crazy WrestleMania-like show where nothing is really furthered storyline-wise, although this year is quite different with Brock and Cain and Fury and Strowman. So maybe this year's a little bit different, but yeah, these Saudi shows are a problem. We got 10 years of this, or 5 years of this. Maybe it's 10. We have 10 years of this to have 2 of these a year that are going to fuck up the booking of every show. And that's a shame. But yeah, you're right, Austin. Spectra, thanks for the $1.99, dude. I appreciate it. Just hopped in. Did I miss your thoughts on Bayley? No, those will be coming up here in just a little bit when I get to SmackDown. So far, I've only discussed a little bit of wrestling news. I ranted a little bit on Hell in the Cell. We discussed Monday Night Raw, and now I'm about to get into some NXT and AEW news. Then we'll talk about the press conference, followed by SmackDown, followed by NWA Power. That's what we're looking at now, and we'll be sprinkling in some wrestling news as we go. Spaz Phoenix, thank you, brother, for the $10. That is awesome. Myself and my co-host Guapo just yesterday released a lengthy review of Premier Week, Raw, NXT Dynamite, SmackDown, and Hell in a Cell. Invite you all to check it out. As always, Greg, your content is top S, or tops. Thank you, Spaz. Go check out Spaz's YouTube channel, give him a subscription, and check out his big, long, lengthy review. And with all these wrestling shows coming up every week, I think every review that any YouTuber does is going to be a lengthy review. I'll tell you what, man, it's a good thing I moved these podcasts to a live format, because if I was editing this shit, that would take me forever. Speaking of editing, I'm going to be wrapping up my Halloween Havoc 1998 review in just a couple of days. I'm shooting for Tuesday. So I'll let this podcast sit on the channel tomorrow. I'll be up here Monday, live reacting to Monday Night Raw. And then Tuesday, I will drop Halloween Havoc 1998. I also had a re-upload hit the channel yesterday. If you want to click the top upper right of the screen there, Survivor Series 1995. It got deleted 9-10 months ago, and I've been sitting on it. So I finally re-released that. So check it out if you haven't already, and keep an eye out for that review. I've been wanting to do more retro pay-per-view reviews, and now I'm kind of getting back in the swing of them, and I've got a few more on the calendar as well. I was going to start getting into AEW Dynamite here, but I saw one more from Jimmy Anderson. Thank you, dude. Greetings from, I always forget, it's Sweden, right? Thank you for coming in tonight with the massive super chat. Do you think the match against Cain is a send-off for Brock for a while and a start on a title reign for Cain? Also, Braun deserves better than this feud. Well, let's start with Braun. Yeah, he does. We've been talking now for close to 2 years about him morphing into the Big Show 2.0, and every time he gets in the ring with a celebrity or a boxer or something, that's exactly what he's turning into. He's using the right hand now. Knocked out AJ Styles, knocked him silly, knocked somebody else out on Raw too. Oh, no, maybe he didn't. He just had the scuffle with Fury. So he's using the Big Show's move. He's having matches just like the Big Show with celebrities. He's in battle royals. He's in wrestler versus boxer matches. I'm it ain't going to get much better for Strowman, I don't think. But as far as Cain and Brock, I don't know if it's going to be a send-off for Brock. I kind of feel like Brock at this point, since we're already into October and November, he'll work Mania. They're not going to have Brock not work Mania, unless you mean as a send-off, he'll just be gone until then. But then I don't know if they're going to put the belt on Cain. I don't even. And first of all, we're going to talk about the press conference in a minute, but I'm not even sure if this is a title match. I have not seen where it's listed that it's a WWE title match, but I'm assuming it is. I mean, otherwise, why'd they even put the belt on Brock? They could have just done this match. So them putting the belt on Cain in his first WWE match, he's done some lucha stuff. I checked out his debut match. He can move. I mean, he's got a weird shape to him. He's got a weird body type. I'm surprised Vince McMahon, even wants to be involved with him, because he does not look like the Vince McMahon type of guy. His arms are short. He doesn't have a really good physique. He doesn't really have a lot of flash to him, where Brock just looks like $1 million. You never know that it was Cain that was the one that pounded Brock into the ground in the UFC. So I don't know if they're going to put the belt on him. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I would kind of hope not. I kind of want to vote no on that right now. And if they do continue the Cain and Brock stuff, maybe that can get more interesting once they get back here in the States. So maybe Brock puts him over first in a non-title match, and then Brock gets the win back with the title on the line, something like that. I don't know. But we'll talk about that here a little bit more in a minute when I discuss the press conference. And one final one before we do that, Spaz Phoenix, thank you for another one, dude. Another $5. Love to see a new heel Bayley versus badass tweener Rhea Ripley. Hell yeah. And I'm going to talk about Rhea Ripley as well here in a minute, Spaz. Actually, right now, when I talk about Dynamite and NXT. Like I said, I had a good friend of the channel, Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret, in the apartment on Wednesday to watch AEW and NXT with me. I joined him in his review on his channel, which was awesome exposure for the channel. It was really cool to have for him to have me on there. So I put the link to that in the top right-hand corner of the screen as well. You can click that and check out my cameo on his channel if you have not yet already. And you can also hear our thoughts on AEW and NXT as we reviewed both shows in their entirety. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to talk about a few key points of each show, and we're going to talk about the ratings as well. We'll start with Dynamite, because I feel like for the second week in a row, Dynamite won the week. NXT is still great. I still think overall, pound for pound, NXT is probably the best wrestling on the planet right now. But AEW, for the second straight week, I think that it feels like their competitor should be more Monday Night Raw or something, because that's the way their show is. NXT is still just heavily focused on wrestling, although they were doing a few different things with kind of the catwalk promos and the Roderick Strong doing the Shawn Michaels Playgirl pose and shit like that. But for the most part, AEW still feels like that crazy, wacky, wild professional wrestling show where anything can happen. You don't get that feel that much in NXT, where AEW has been pulling it off now 2 weeks in a row. I thought it was another solid show. They had that great opening match with the Private Party and the Young Bucks. That saw a huge upset. I mean, we saw an upset in both shows, openers, with Lio Rush winning the Cruiserweight title. But here, the Private Party scoring a big win over the Young Bucks to advance in the tournament, I thought was a good move in hindsight. I kind of thought that maybe Cody and Kenny, they would be held off on their mega pushes right now. Cody's got the title match against Jericho at Full Gear. I think Jericho will retain. And I kind of feel like there might be this internal unwritten rule in AEW that says they're not going to push the executives right away. But I kind of thought that the Bucks would win the titles in the tournament, just because they're the most well-known and most over tag team outside of WWE. But with that being said, going back to something Jericho said right after AEW's launch on a podcast, forget whose podcast it was, I apologize for that. But he goes, look, we're going to be on cable TV now with a whole roster of 50 stars that we have to get over individually. And you can't do that in 1 week. It's going to be a slow process. And we have to get the other fans, the non-hardcore fans, because the hardcores know who Kenny and the Bucks and Cody and guys like that are. But there's a whole roster full of talent that maybe casual wrestling fans or maybe people that primarily watch WWE and are starting to get frustrated with WWE. They need to get to know and who these wrestlers are. Get to know their characters, and these wrestlers need to get over individually. So having the Private Party here score a big victory in the tournament, no less, is going to now put them in another big-time feature match next week or whenever the tournament resumes, and it's going to get fans more and more familiar with them instead of the Bucks just winning and Private Party, just doing what any team on WWE does, quite frankly. So I think that was actually a really good move to put them over on the major upset there. And you had the two shows with two really good matches to start. Lio Rush and Drew Gulak was going head-to-head with that on NXT. Both matches lasted about 25 minutes. Both matches had huge upsets. But still, I think the bigger one was AEW. I'm going to give them a slight nod on that. The epic Chris Jericho promo or monologue, where he just talked the entire Inner Circle. By the way, that is the name of the faction. It's going to be called the Inner Circle. It's going to be Chris Jericho and LAX and Jake Hager and Sammy Guevara. And Jericho came out there looking great. I love that Judas song. That's a great professional wrestling entrance. I've been rocking out to it in the car a little bit recently. Never really listened to it full before, but it just fits him so well. And looked great with that blazer, that purple blazer, La Champion. The belt looks great. I really, really like the AEW belt. The more I'm seeing it on TV. And basically just puts over everybody in his crew. Does all the talking. If this was WWE, everybody would have their turn on the mic where they would say some dumb little like lame one-liner. But they didn't do that here. You know, they'll get a chance to speak, I'm sure, in upcoming weeks. But this first night was all about Jericho, in-ring promo with the champ, stating his case, a few little cheap shots at WWE as well, laughing at the creative and talking about we the people. They were chanting we the people, and he says we the people was stupid and dead or whatever. Forget the fact that Jake Hager was using the we the people thing in his MMA fight, wasn't he? I think he either came out to the song or he did the chant with the fans or something. So he didn't think it was so silly. But but Jericho took a shot at WWE's creative there, which I like. You know, like I said, I don't want the companies to become obsessed with each other the way the way WCW got obsessed with WWE back in the day. But I do want to see shots being fired. I do want to see little jabs here and there because that's fun. That's fun for us. As long as they don't go over the top with it, as long as it doesn't become what TNA did and becomes the focal point of what they do, where every single fucking thing they do in that company is all in reaction to WWE. Provided AEW doesn't take it to that level, which I think they're smarter than that, I think all this is in good fun. I love it. I want to see more from WWE's side and more from AEW side. Just little shots here and there, just to remind the fans that they know the others exist, and this is, some head-to-head combat here. So I liked Jericho's entire promo. It might be promo of the year. I saw that phrase mentioned a time or two since Wednesday. I'd put it up there. It just goes to show it speaks volumes and great illustration of what a megastar veteran Jericho is, to be able to go out there and just carry a segment on the mic all by himself, get his point across, and fucking amazing job. Inner Circle, like I said, is the name of the faction. They would be out there later on with the t-shirts. I already had t-shirts made. It's another good positive that I'm seeing with AEW is they seem to be streamlined. They seem to have forward planning. You know, they didn't decide on the name of the faction during lunch. They already knew the name of the faction, and they already had merch made for it. So that's the type of thing that I like to see in wrestling companies, because we've seen problems with other wrestling companies, especially like back in the 90s with ECW, who just didn't have their shit together. They just didn't have the infrastructure. You had Tommy Dreamer and the fucking Dudley Boys sending out merchandise in Paul Heyman's mom's basement. So now you got a company that actually has, the funding, and they have the staffing, and they just have enough money to be able to support a company that needs to do all these different things with the marketing and the different branches of the company that need to be taken care of. So they've got their act together, and they seem like a company that you can trust, as far as putting their shit out week after week. And it doesn't, so far, 2 weeks in, does not have a all over the place clusterfucky type of feel. You know what I mean? And that's a credit to AEW so far. They're doing an excellent job. The main event was also very fun. Bonkers main event with maybe arguably a little bit too much going on there, but that's just an overbooking issue that's not, at the end of the day, a huge deal. It was still really fun. And the spot of the night was Darby Allin riding down the ramp on a skateboard and hitting Jericho with a high knee, which I thought was great. I thought they jumped the gun on WWE, who currently has changed the Raw set into a quarter pipe, and it just looks like it's meant for skateboarding. So I wouldn't be surprised if AEW wanted to make sure they had someone come down on a skateboard before WWE did, because it seems obvious that you get Matt Riddle out there on a skateboard, he can do a few ollies on that thing or something. So I really like that spot. We both marked out hard in the apartment when that happened. Overall, it was just a good, fun wrestling show. And, the ratings reflected it. Next week, we have one really good match already announced. for Dynamite next week. We're going to have Jon Moxley teaming up with Pac to take on Kenny Omega and Adam Page. That ain't too shabby. We saw the situation. The one thing that I thought was weird on Dynamite was the confrontation between Moxley and Omega. You had, who was Omega wrestling? Was it Guevara? I've already forgotten. But you had Pac on commentary. He winds up blindsiding Kenny Omega when Moxley is out there. And then Moxley doesn't want to hurt Omega, which makes no sense because the previous week he DDT'd him through a glassed coffee table, which, if you ask me, is attempted murder. And now all of a sudden he doesn't want to take an unfair advantage. I thought that was a little silly. Maybe that should not have happened right after the coffee table spot, maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now. Then maybe Moxley shows remorse or something. So I didn't like that whole thing. And now he's got to team up with Pac, and they don't seem like they're going to be that much on the same page. Wouldn't be surprised if we get some dissension between those two as well. And that's going to be next week on Dynamite. And that ain't too shabby. Now, Darby Allin has got a title match against Chris Jericho. Pac was on commentary saying, what the hell is that all about? You guys say wins and losses don't matter, or wins and losses do matter, excuse me, and I'm undefeated. Where's my title shot? And he's right, and his strength of opponent has been much greater. He's got victories over Adam Page and Kenny Omega. So the fact that Darby Allin, despite taking Cody Rhodes to a time limit draw, why is he getting the shot? So I understand why they're doing that, though. You want to save Pac. You don't want to just do it now. So save Pac for a pay-per-view or something like that and keep him rolling. I love Pac. I think he's one of the biggest, brightest, shining stars in that company right now. As far as NXT goes, like I said, Lio Rush scored the big upset over Drew Gulak in the opener to win the Cruiserweight title there. That was a damn good match. Really good match, but I think AEW might have just slightly outdone him in the opening match there. The other thing I liked about NXT, the main thing I liked about it was my girl, Rhea Ripley, came out there and absolutely plowed through Aaliyah in a match. And I've been saying how long now? 2 months? Whenever it was. I don't even remember how long it's been now. That Rhea Ripley faced Shayna Baszler on NXT, and it was a DQ or whatever. I'm like, there you go. You got to book that for TakeOver. And Brian and I were talking about it. We mentioned it on his video. He said, are we going to be proven wrong again? Every time Baszler has an opponent, we say, okay, this is it. This is going to be the girl that beats her. And I was like, not me. I have not once have I predicted Shayna Baszler to lose her title. Every single title match that she has had that I've predicted her to win, because I haven't felt like it's time. The fans are they're just going on time. Well, it's been 7 months. It's been too long. Let's take the title off her. You don't just take the title off of her for the sake of taking the title off of her. She now has a run. I know it's not as exciting as Asuka's long run, but she's being built as a badass. She's got that MMA background, that connection to Rousey. What is wrong with booking a super strong, crazy over female to where the longer her run goes, the better it's going to be when she drops it? And I think the fans kept predicting her to lose because they were just tired of her being champion, but that's not a good enough reason. You don't want to just put the belt on anybody. I love Io Shirai, but I didn't think she was going to win. And a lot of fans wanted her to drop it in triple threat matches. Didn't she have a triple threat at TakeOver or at WrestleMania? And that was the first show I remember saying in the beginning of the year. I'm like, okay, I don't want Shayna dropping that belt until the very earliest, the WrestleMania TakeOver show. But when that match was announced, or whatever match it was that was a triple threat, I'm like, well, no, I don't want to see Shayna lose it in a triple threat. Unless WWE just really wants to keep her strong, I want to see her lose it in a one-on-one big match situation where you're ready for it, you can feel it kind of thing. All these other matches, Candice LeRae, the 2 or 3 shots that Bianca Belair has had, fans were mad that Bianca Belair didn't win. I'm like, come on. Let's just save it. There's nothing wrong with a run. We have Monday Night Raw, SmackDown Live, AEW Dynamite, NXT, New Japan, NWA, Impact. I think you've got enough title belts. I think you'll live if you take one of these champions of the 500 that we have and just put them on a long run to where when they finally do run into somebody that can beat them and they can smack them in the mouth, it's going to mean that much more. And this is it. After all of these predictions of Baszler winning, retaining, when they do make this match, which I'm assuming they will because Rhea Ripley, after her victory, called out Shayna Baszler, I think this will be a TakeOver match, and if it does get booked, I will predict Shayna to lose. This is it. This is the opponent I've been waiting for. This is all I've wanted. I haven't wanted Shayna to drop the belt just to drop it. I've wanted her to drop it to the right girl. And I think Rhea is the right girl. Bianca wasn't the right girl. Io Shirai wasn't the right girl. Candice LeRae wasn't the right girl. In my opinion. She might be your right girl, but she's not mine. I want Rhea Ripley. I think she is the most credible, baddest looking. She reminds me of like a female Drew McIntyre. Very much in love with her. I just think she's awesome wrestler. And I think she would be a perfect person because she is kind of badassy that will stand toe to toe with Shayna and not be afraid of her. And if we do get that outcome, let's just say I'm right, and Rhea Ripley gets the match and she beats Shayna, puts her down. Doesn't have to be a squash or anything, but beats her. Don't you think that's going to make for a great moment? Aren't you going to be happy that you waited? Don't you think this is better than just passing it to Bianca Belair for some reason? I think this would be much, much better. Now, speaking of Bianca, it looks like Rhea's going to have to go through her first. Later on NXT, Bianca Belair came out, cut a promo, and said, hey, if you want a shot at Baszler, you're going to have to go through me, which doesn't make any sense. She's already had a couple of opportunities, came up short. So I guess since we have so much time until TakeOver, which is going to be mid-November, something like that, we got a ways. This will give WWE a good match, number one contenders match, whatever they do. I don't know if it's announced yet or not, but I assume it will be. Probably on TV. Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, winner faces Shayna Baszler at TakeOver. Wouldn't you think? So if that happens, I'm telling you, I'm going to be a happy camper. So I think everybody, for the most part, just needs to be patient. And I think patience pays off. And if my suspicions are correct about Rhea Ripley, I think it's going to be worth the wait. And NXT also had a fabulous main event as well. Jesus, Kushida and Walter. So this is why I love this Wednesday competition, because both shows really mirrored each other. Great opening with a great upset and then a great main event. I mean, that Kushida and Walter match was nuts. That might have been match of the week. I think Kushida and Walter maybe was the better wrestling match. The main event of AEW had so much going on with the multiple run-ins and everything. But Kushida and Walter for a pure match, I thought was, probably match of the week easily. As far as the ratings go, we had the ratings come in the next day. Both shows were down from the previous week, which is to be expected. Nobody thought AEW would bounce back with that 1.4 that they got the previous week. They went down to just over 1 million homes for the week. That's down from the 1.4, and NXT was down about 100,000. They went from 890,000 to 790,000. So a little bit more of a drop for AEW, and now the gap is bridged. Now there's only about a 200,000 home difference in the ratings, but AEW did win for the second week in a row relatively convincingly, and we'll just have to see, if they can sustain it in the long run. I think a lot of fans are going to be tuning into them over NXT right now. Like I said, just out of curiosity, that's what I'd be doing. The first 2 weeks that I've watched, I haven't watched either week live, but both weeks I've watched AEW first and then followed it up with NXT. So and I'm going to be home next Wednesday as well, I believe, to watch these. So I will likely do the same thing. I'll probably watch AEW live and then catch up on NXT. So I think those numbers will continue for a while, but can AEW sustain it? Can they continue to provide good television? If you notice, the crowd size was a lot more realistic. I think AEW booking, one level convention centers where you're looking at 1,000 to 5,000 people is a much more realistic arena for their shows and would look better, quite honestly. I think that's a perfect amount for a show. I think Full Sail is almost too small. I like a small environment, but I almost wish they had more than 400 in there. I wish it was like 1,400 or maybe just 1,000, maybe just double the size of the crowd in Full Sail or triple. And then I feel like you'd have a good, small, intimate crowd. I don't know in the future if WWE feels that's the area that they need to improve on by moving NXT out of Full Sail, potentially crippling the identity that they have there, which would not be good. It would be nice if they could still stay in maybe that area, but go to just a little bit bigger of a venue. I don't know. I don't know if WWE even thinks that production's an issue in the competition here. And when you compare the numbers to Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, especially, you put both shows together and they're still not getting the ratings that those shows are, or at least SmackDown. So the ratings war will continue. We'll see how the ratings fluctuate and if and when NXT is ever able to score that victory. But like I said about AEW, they could be in a really good position creatively only having that one show. At least with NXT, Triple H being in charge, we trust them. But the Raw, SmackDown, and pay-per-views on the other end, and the Crown Jewels, and all this other shit they have going on, it moves so fast that they just can't get their feet underneath them from a booking or creative standpoint. And with AEW only having this one show a week, it allows them to really, I think, focus more on long-term booking, which is a huge problem for them. for WWE, not for AEW. And long-term booking is something that the fans always want. Every fan wants a long, fun storyline that ties together in the end or something. That's what I've always wanted. They fell ass backwards into their Kofi angle this year when he got the title and it turned into, this 11-year journey. They didn't even mean to do that, but it was one of their better long-term stories that they've ever booked. And they did it by accident. So it's a big problem in WWE, and I think it's something that AEW is going to show the fans that they can do a lot better. And I think because, like I said, they just have the one show a week with the pay-per-view every couple of months, it's going to allow them a lot more time creatively to come up with the ideas and be able to plan. WWE just has bad planning most of the time is what it comes down to. So congrats to AEW for a second week in a row victory there. I'm hoping that both companies just continue to push because it's not like NXT had a bad show. Jesus, that show was off the hook and they're going to give us more to come. We know we're going to get great wrestling every week from NXT. And so how long AEW can keep up and if they can stay ahead, the longer the better for the wrestling fans. I'm not really ready for AEW to lose in the ratings yet. They will, but I want to see them continue to have that fan support, at least for a little while, because if they start losing right off the bat, I'm going to be disappointed. So I'm kind of rooting for AEW, at least ratings-wise, to continue winning for a little while. It was announced also, I've not seen any of AEW Dark yet, but I guess Taz will be a part, I think, of the commentary team next week, so that's kind of cool. And Jericho retweeted a fan yesterday, and I was going to talk about this on this episode anyway. There's been some talk about an AEW show possibly being on the Jericho Cruise. Now, I'm going to be going on the Jericho Cruise in January, and it's like a Monday to Friday. So we're going to be at sea on a Wednesday, and it's Jericho's cruise. If he's still champion during that time, which he very well could be, then, he's going to be champion on that cruise. There's a lot of AEW talent for it booked at last check. So how can you not do something? If it's on a Wednesday, unless you pre-tape a Dynamite or something, I would love for them to bring a Dynamite to the boat. Fuck yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's room on there to even do something like that, but probably not. But the fact that we're going to be at sea, or I'm going to be at sea with a whole bunch of AEW wrestlers on a Wednesday is going to make for really interesting in January. Jesus, I hope they don't cancel this cruise. But Jericho just quote tweeted him with like ... So I don't know if that means like, yes, of course there will be something on the boat or what, but I'm kind of interested that there might be some AEW stuff going on there. And it's kind of interesting too, because still as of right now, Eric Bischoff is listed as a guest. If he's really the executive director of WWE TV, do they want him attending an AEW show? So he's still on the guest list though. And a few other WWE people are as well, like Booker T and maybe some others. So should be interesting come January. Before I move on now to WWE's press conference, let me just cruise in here to the chat, make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I think I did miss a couple, and then we'll move on to that. Also, pretty good audience in here today. Thanks for the 250, 300 of you that are hanging out here today. Can you do me a favor and smash that thumbs up? We're only at 62 likes, which is lame. It's Saturday. Hook me up with a Saturday like, y'all. I'd appreciate it. And again, if I do miss anybody at the end here, I will shout you out on Twitter or on your YouTube channel. But I think I've got all these super chats answered here. Mr. Solo Loke Rager, thank you for the $2, dude. AEW is so easy to watch. I'm glued till commercial. That's a big statement right there, because that's what you want out of a wrestling show. You want it to be easy to watch. You want it to be fun to watch. You don't want it to be a chore. I felt like it was a chore making my notes today, because I'm never going to be home to watch Smackdown on Fridays, because I'm always working on a Friday night. And I was hearing from all of you that the show wasn't that great, so I had to come home and watch a shitty show just to make notes on it. So whenever you can have a show that's easy to watch, that's fun to watch, that makes you enjoy wrestling again, I think that's what AEW should strive to do. And so far, they're doing a really good job, because they've had me hooked too. So I don't think, when you try to think of your expectations of AEW. I know some fans that are so rabidly hating, filled with hate over WWE and all the irrational, complete whack jobs that are out there. If you filter those people out and you just take the regular ass people that are adjusted and not psycho, and we think of our expectations of AEW and what we were going to expect from them, I could not have asked for anything better. I mean, what else could they really have done? They've started off hot 2 weeks. I think their next pay-per-view is looking good. And so far, there's been a few things I might have done differently, but not many. So far, I'm very comfortable with what AEW has been providing me as a wrestling fan. All right, I think that catches the super chats up. Let's go down here now and talk about WWE's press conference. Where's my mouse? Get over to the screen. They did the big press conference. on the SmackDown set prior to SmackDown yesterday. So this was the big announcement that we knew we were going to get for Tyson Fury and Braun Strowman and Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar for the Crown Jewel show in Saudi Arabia on October 31st. So nothing that took place on this press conference was surprising. We knew this is what was going to happen. The promos were just blah. It was very quiet in there, too. The big stare down between Strowman and Tyson was dumb, and then they had to be pulled apart right after they had their pull apart on Monday, so they had to do that whole thing again. They then brought out Brock Lesnar and Cain Velasquez. Paul Heyman put over Cain, and they talked about Brock's scar on his face that was given to him by Cain in that UFC fight where Cain took the UFC title from him in that first-round TKO way back in 2010. Paul Heyman made no bones about that. He talked about it on SmackDown as well, which I'll mention in a minute. And they did the big photo op, the fists up and the stare down. I don't think there was any pushing and shoving between those two guys, but the fight is now official. And like I said, I did not see, unless something came out today, I did not see where a title match was written down. This very well could be a title match. I'm sorry for not really knowing that going into this podcast, but whether it's a title match or not is going to play a role into the outcome, I would think. If it is for the title, I don't know if you put the belt on Cain Velasquez. Is that what we want to do here? If it's a non-title, I think Cain will beat Brock. And then maybe Brock beats him in the rematch or something. I don't really know how they're going to do this yet. I got to think about it a little bit. But I will say this, I am interested in it. I'm interested in it because I'm reminded of the time back in the 90s when Dan Severn was brought in right after Ken Shamrock. Now, Shamrock was already there. The two of them had a couple of fights in the UFC where they split. Shamrock won one, Dan Severn won one. And now they're both in WWE together. And this was around the time of the Brawl for All, too. And I'm like, I remember just being really interested just in understanding the dynamic of how someone goes from shoot fighting to pro wrestling. And if you're used to fighting for real, how do you transition into fake fighting? How do you start pulling your punches when you're so used to following through with your punches? And if you have two guys that have an MMA history together, like Shamrock and Severn, what is their professional wrestling match going to be like? To me, I just always thought it was interesting just based on the amount of professionalism that one must have to go from kicking the shit out of somebody for real to kicking the shit out of somebody for fake. And now with Brock and Cain, it kind of gives me that same feeling, although this is bigger. Now, number one, I cannot stand the Saudi Arabia shows. I don't have a whole lot of, I don't have a whole lot of love for MMA or boxing at all. And I tweeted something about this yesterday. I kind of regretted because it didn't come out the way I wanted to. I was almost like defending the Cain and Brock match because of the curiosity factor. And I was reminded of Shamrock and Severn back in the day, just because of how interesting it was. And that's all I find this. I just find it interesting. I find it interesting that Cain Velasquez, with all of his previous UFC history with Brock Lesnar, is now coming into the WWE, to have a worked match. And just how that's going to work, what the match is going to look like. And Brock is all business. To me, I think the fans are so misunderstood sometimes when they start claiming, oh, Brock must have refused a job. I don't think Brock gives a fuck about losing or winning. Clearly. He's been squashed by Goldberg. He's had his ass handed to him twice this year by Seth Rollins. Brock will do business. Any push or mega push or victories WWE gives him is WWE doing it. It's not Brock lobbying for it. Brock, to be quite honest, is a lot more professional than Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan and guys like that would pitch and moan about every fucking match outcome. Brock's like, you know what? You pay me, I'll do whatever you want. So I don't think Brock is going to have any personal issue jobbing Velasquez at all, especially if he knows he's going to come back and get his win back later like he did with Goldberg. So I am not ready to try to figure out who they're going to put over here because I just don't know yet, but I'll probably have a better idea in the next couple of weeks as we see how this builds, as we see where Brock Lesnar lands. Brock and Seth both are in the pool this Monday to be drafted. So they will be drafted somewhere. I'm assuming Brock stays on SmackDown because Becky got drafted number 1 to Raw. They're probably going to want to keep Becky and Seth together anyway. So I'm guessing that Seth will wind up on Raw and Brock will wind up on SmackDown to continue the Velasquez build, which they can do on Fox, which is a big deal. So I've got Brock pretty much staying there, and that's where the build is going to take place, I suppose. And I don't know how many scuffles we're going to get between the two or what. I don't know what this match is going to look like in the ring or if it's going to be any good. But the good news is, if it's bad, at least It took place in a Saudi Arabia show that we don't give a fuck about anyway, so I guess all will be right with the world. And Cain Velasquez also has signed, reportedly, a multi-year deal with WWE, so he has now officially signed, and he's going to be there for a while. I don't know what kind of contract he's going to have, if he's going to work like Ronda Rousey, which is pretty much all the time, or if he's going to work like Brock Lesnar, where he just comes in periodically as an attraction. Don't know yet. So none of that, I mean, all of that is going to play into whether or not they put him over here against Brock. So I think if the title is not on the line, Cain Velasquez has an excellent chance to win. Probably will. If the belt is not on the line, then, you know, Brock maybe somehow retains. You could always do a non-finish, DQ, something like that. Who cares, right? And I also think it's pretty safe to say with all WWE's last name dropping, they're going to leave Velasquez alone, if you know what I mean. We already have one big red machine. So we'll talk about this more as we go further here. Next week, I'm sure I'll have a lot more to say about the Cain and Brock match. And I just don't know what to make of it right now. But it does interest me. Where on the other side of the coin, when you look at Strowman and Fury, I do not care at all. That's one match that I probably won't even watch. And I'm not sure, I don't even know what day of the week Halloween falls on this year. I am not going to go out of my way to cover the show. If I'm home, if I'm awake, I'll eyeball it. I'll check out the results. I'll come up and do a quick maybe review or some opinions about it, but I'm not going to treat it like a pay-per-view. I'm not going to make any arrangements with work to be home to cover it or do a review or anything like that. These Saudi Arabia shows are dirty, and we don't like them, and I kind of wish they didn't exist. But a match of this magnitude, it's kind of hard to ignore. So I don't care about the rest of the card, whatever they do there. I'm not expecting any title changes or anything like that. But Brock and Cain will be interesting just to see, you know, how it goes. So I think the tweet that I made yesterday was a little bit misunderstood because I was like almost defending the show and everything like that. It's not that. I perfectly understand the frustration with the show. I perfectly understand the frustration with WWE's booking, but you have fans that are taking their anger with WWE, their frustration with WWE, and then saying things like, nobody cares about Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar. Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar makes no sense. The only thing that doesn't make any sense are those statements. You know, you can be mad and angry at WWE's bookings all you want, but don't turn that anger into untrue, false statements. That's not really true. You know, Cain Velasquez and Brock is extremely interesting, and a lot of people care about it. Just wish it wasn't taking place in Saudi Arabia. Has nothing to do with WWE fucking up Hell in the Cell. Has nothing to do with them ruining the Fiend and Seth Rollins match and ruining your babyface champion and ruining your match concept and giving us one of the shittiest weeks of wrestling in recent memory. You know, that's beside the point. This match is still happening, and regardless of WWE's booking, the match itself is still interesting because I remember when Severn and Shamrock were there, and to me, that was interesting. So all I was really trying to say is that even though I understand everybody's complaints and some people don't like MMA and boxing, and of course the Crown Jewel shows are stupid, I still find the match interesting. That's the only point I was really trying to hammer home there. But now that the press conference is out of the way, we can move on to SmackDown Live, where the draft kicked off. We had a few matches as well. Before we do that here, let me just bounce back into the chat, catch up on a couple of super chats, because I think at least one or two rolled in. Oh, maybe not. I thought I saw one. There's one. Marcus Ryan. Thank you, dude. I don't know if I remember your name. Good to see you in here, though, and thank you for the $5. You are the man. Do you think AEW will eventually have a mid-card title? Good question. Yeah, they will. I don't know. I would think they would. Maybe they just feel like it's not time to really launch one yet. Maybe get your talent over first. Get the audience familiar with them for a few weeks, maybe even until the end of the year. And then early 2019, bring in a mid-card title. What would they name it? I don't know. Intercontinental? TV title? As a matter of fact, I'm going to take my TV title. It's hanging there behind Bobby Lashley's arm. But I'm going to take my TV title to the Jericho Cruise, and I'm going to have Chris Jericho sign it. Because that would be a really cool belt to have signed. Now, based on the guest list, the only former Winged Eagle title holder on the cruise is Kevin Nash. So I might take both belts and have Kevin sign the Winged Eagle, but I might want to save it for Brett. I just think eventually I want to attend to Brett signing somewhere and have him sign the Winged Eagle and he be the lone signature on it. And Jericho, of course, I have so many great memories of him in late 90s WCW when he was TV champion. So I think I'm going to take that one with me for sure. And eventually maybe get the Winged Eagle signed by Bret Hart. But if they brought one in, I don't know what I would want it to be called. They might want to call it something completely different. I don't know if they'll have it in the same style that the world title is in, if it'll look similar or what, but I think a mid-card title actually has to come, in AEW. It would be more fun. And hopefully it will be something like an Intercontinental or TV. And if it was up to me, I mean, they might do it sooner, but if it was up to me, I might wait till 2020 to launch that. Just the end of the year. Give 2 months, 2.5 months to get your talent as over as possible on the TV show. And then you can start putting contenders in a tournament to where the fans actually know who these contenders are. And plus, we've got the tag team tournament going on right now, and you don't want 2 tournaments happening simultaneously, I would imagine. But we'll get into SmackDown now and talk about the draft and what we saw on that show. Let me take a little sip of delicious Ralph's purified drinking water. So the draft, there's so much going on here. This was so confusing. The draft confused the shit out of me. WWE released the rules of the draft a couple days before, and I couldn't even understand it. It was like one pool was available for SmackDown, and then the other pool was available for Raw, but you could still draft from the other pool. I forgot how the fuck it happened. I forgot how the hell it went down. They just divided up into 2 pools available 2 different nights instead of just taking the entire roster and drafting them one by one. I guess they wanted to make both shows have top picks on them available. That's why they split up the pools like that. That way they don't blow through all the good ones on SmackDown, leaving the undercard for Monday Night Raw. That's my guess. But it just made everything a little bit extra confusing. And like I said earlier, their monumental fuck up when they released the draft pools on their website. They listed the SmackDown draft pool in the order that they were drafted. So if you look at the pool and then you look at who Stephanie drafted right in a row, identical to the list. So they corrected that error for the Monday Night Raw pool by putting everybody in alphabetical order. But geez, it's just typical WWE, just heads up their asses. What are you guys doing, man? I've already had my doubts about this draft. WWE with this, we're going to have exclusive brands and everything. I'm like, whatever. I'll believe that when I see it. And I have zero confidence in them to actually keep these brands exclusive. I have zero confidence in them to do anything right. And the whole thing is just weird. They got the Fox and NBC executives involved in this. They had like war rooms with like a Fox room and a USA room. Stephanie announced all the picks, so it wasn't like Heyman and Bischoff or anything like that. She would announce the picks in like 3 different segments, 3 different rounds, one after another, Raw, then SmackDown, Raw, SmackDown. So she did that throughout the whole night, and then they would have all these cutbacks to the war room where they're high-fiving and, and all that. It was just so, I don't know, I just didn't like it. It just came off, they're trying to make it feel legitimate. We had all the cameos from the NFL on Fox guys and the analysts and all that, and the Joe Buck and everything, but still, WWE's just, I don't know, they're just stroking themselves. They're so excited to be on Fox, and it's annoying, a little bit annoying to watch. Pardon me, I just bumped the desk there. But before we get into like which show got what talent, let's run through some of these matches too, because the show opened up with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. Now, what was funny about this is that the winner, their brand gets the number 1 pick. But what's funny is this wild card rule makes it so pointless to have a match like this. You know what I mean? Vince McMahon fucked all this up when he made the wild card rule, because with the wild card rule, you have talent appearing on both shows. Seth has been on the past several weeks SmackDown, but yet he's representing Raw. Like if you're on both shows and the wild card rule has rendered, the brand's new, what am I trying to say here? It's basically recombine the talent to where you don't have any reason to support your brand. You don't have any reason to represent Raw or SmackDown because you're working both fucking shows anyway. So, and a lot of people forgot that Roman is even on SmackDown because he's always on Raw. So the whole wildcard rule makes matches like this where the winner's brand gets the pick stupid. They're going to do the same thing on Raw this Monday with Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch. Sasha, who was reportedly injured after Hell in a Cell, apparently is good to go. So that's excellent news. So they're going to do that match again on Monday Night Raw with the same deal. The winner's brand gets the first pick on Raw. So Seth and Roman have their match. Good little match. I mean, it didn't last too long, but, those guys can have good matches together. They know what they're doing. They're interrupted by The Fiend. The Fiend comes up from under the ring, attacks Seth Rollins and drags him underneath the ring. And Seth, kind of like jumps out, clutching his throat and everything. Well, since The Fiend attacked Seth Rollins, that got Roman DQ'd. So Raw got the first pick, and Raw selected Becky Lynch as their number 1 pick. So Seth and Roman had that opening match, which was just dumb to have a stip like that because, doesn't even feel like anybody's even on a brand right now. So why are wrestlers representing a brand? We had Brock Lesnar and a Paul Heyman promo. Heyman came out there and talked up the Velasquez match, talked about Brock confronting his fears, made no bones about the fact that Cain knocked Brock the fuck out or TKO'd him in the first round, talked about the scar, and talked about Brock Lesnar conquering his fears on the 31st, and he welcomes the opportunity to face Cain. Rey Mysterio comes out to the ramp with Velasquez, and they say a few words on the stage, and Cain says that he's going to give Brock a matching scar on the other side of his face, so that was kind of interesting. I mentioned the NFL guys. They cut to Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, who made a few comments, who are just forced by the network to talk about this shit, and they gave their 2 cents on the draft, and they cut to the NFL Sunday crew, the Jimmy Johnson and the Terry Bradshaw and whoever the fuck else they have on there, and they also did the college crew with Urban Meyer and Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush. They had Jay Glazer on there, so they had all sorts of Fox celebrities and personalities putting their 2 cents in on the draft, which is just more major network rub, and it's what we're going to see a lot of, I'm assuming, on Fox and WWE, the co-promotion. WWE's really flexing their look how big we are muscles. We also had the New Day defeating the OC. Kofi is back to business as usual, as if he never even held the title at all. Right back with the New Day throwing pancakes. They did give him a little nod here by giving him the victory over AJ. He hit AJ with the Trouble in Paradise and got the win for his team. So the New Day beat the OC there. What do I talk about next? The fucking main event or Shorty Gable. Let's talk about Gable and Corbin. Rematch again. King of the Ring finals rematch again. Baron Corbin coined Chad Gable Shorty last week on TV, and it looks like they're actually doing it now. He was introduced as Shorty Gable, complete with Titantron and full-blown name change. Fuck off, WWE. This guy's an Olympian. An Olympian. The story is right there told. Was he Shorty Angle when Kurt was there? No. You got a great athlete, a badass wrestler who didn't win the King of the Ring, and you kept strong anyway. You feel like he could pick back up here, maybe even turn heel or something. And now you're calling him Shorty. That's what you came up with, Shorty. That's what I called people that were shorter than me in 2nd grade. Shorty. And now it's his actual name? You fucking assholes. This company, man, I swear. And you know what? Shout out to Brazzers, the adult network. Don't pretend like you don't know who they are. Who tweeted after Hell in the Cell, a hilarious tweet. They tweeted out, get a load of this. Hey, WWE, let us know if you need advice on how to craft logical and coherent storylines with satisfying finishes. Which is just hysterical to me. Imagine that. Imagine the state of affairs in WWE, where a porn company, where the last thing in the world that matters in a porn movie is the storyline. And when you have something like that providing better stories than WWE, you got yourselves a problem. But they weren't done. They followed that tweet up on Friday night when they quoted their own tweet and said, Shorty G, we rest our case. So whoever runs the Brazzers account is a big wrestling fan. They actually, just a couple years ago, too, did the Screwjob parody, right? I remember talking about that in a podcast. So the fact that they're even giving shit to WWE has been great. That is a fun... I don't even follow that Twitter account, but I think I'm going to start because apparently they're pretty fun and they're wrestling fans over there. And also shout out to whoever's running WWE on Fox's Twitter account too. They've had some fun things to say as well. So I kind of thought that was interesting that Brazzers chimed in twice and let it be known that even they think something like Shorty G or Shorty Gable is ridiculous. So that whole match and that whole angle is dumb because Shorty lost. Corbin beat him with the End of Days again. So it's not even like this Shorty name change can be any sort of a rebirth, or he can be a different type of storyline or angle or push for Gable. He's right back to losing before he even changed his name from Chad to Shorty. So this I find horrifically frustrating and annoying, and it angers me, and I think it's fucking dumb. This is why I hate WWE right now, because you guys are dumb. It's a stupid idea. I mean, a lot of things fans have thought they've been stupid ideas and they turned out to be great, but I have a feeling this is not going to be one of those occasions. If it's dumb now, it's likely going to be dumb later. And yeah, Shorty Gable is here. Yippee. Before we get into the actual draft and who landed where, let's talk about our friend Bayley. I know somebody was waiting for me to talk about her here. Bayley finally has gone the way of the heel on SmackDown. Main event was Bayley versus Charlotte in a SmackDown Women's title rematch. Charlotte makes her way to the ring, followed by Bayley, who comes out there with her normal music, but her hair is cut shorter. She's got a hood on, takes the hood off, hair is cut short, no more ponytail, takes the jacket off. She's wearing a little bit less bright colors, more like a yellow and black type of look, and the music shuts off. And she's got those annoying inflatable things, which I've always hated. And boy, did this turn out to be a good day for me, because she reaches down, she picks up what I guess is a pickaxe or, I don't know, something sharp. And she just starts swinging and tearing up and destroying the Bayley buddies. So she deflates them all, which is great. They all just go limp and fall right down to this stage there. And she gets in the ring and has the match with Charlotte, counters a figure 8 into a small package, or an inside cradle, and pins her. And wins back the SmackDown Women's title. So Bayley wins the belt back. She gets on the mic after the victory and tells the fans to screw you. Exactly what I've been saying Bayley should do for the past year or more. And she didn't go quite as far as I wanted. I pitched like a year ago of her going like full on dark. Like dark hair, dark makeup, maybe a little bit of a gothy look, maybe a tattoo sleeve on her arm, change up her music a little bit. She didn't go quite to that extreme, but she's definitely a little bit more badass now. She definitely doesn't give a shit about the fans anymore. She's changed up her music, changed up her look a little bit, no more hugging, and she's won the belt back, and I think that's fabulous. Now, it gave Charlotte yet another very short title reign. She's had a 5-day run and a 12-day run this year, and like a 1-day run, I think, or a minute's run. So she's had some short ones. She's won 10 world titles, but I saw a lot of people getting mad that. So this is where we're at in wrestling world. The WWE doesn't make any sense. Wrestling Twitter doesn't make any more sense either. So you have people that hate Charlotte, but yet are mad that she dropped the belt because it gave her another title reign, and so that makes them mad. Instead of focusing on what this was about, and it was about Bayley and the evolution of Bayley and the change in Bayley's character. For her to lose the title at Hell in the Cell in order to get frustrated and make this drastic change allowed her to win it back. To me, that's where the story is. It has nothing to do with Charlotte. I think the fans are a little bit too obsessed sometimes with their irrational hatred for people. Yes, Charlotte has a 10th run. You'll live. You'll survive. I promise. Suck it the fuck up. It's okay. So she has 10 title runs. Who cares? It wasn't about her tonight. Or last night. It was about Bayley. It was about Bayley's evolution. It's about making Bayley a character that the fans might give a shit a little bit more about now with this new look and this new attitude. So I love to see it. I just hope, again, like seems to be the case with everything in WWE, that they can follow through. Because their ability to follow through and book things long-term is not their strong suit. And now with Bayley back in the driver's seat as the champion, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, I don't think... is she in the pool? She might be on the pool on Monday. She's probably going to be sticking around on SmackDown, which also did get Sasha Banks. So they probably will be sticking around together, Bayley and Sasha, which is probably good. But I loved the new look Bayley. I thought it was great. Glad she won the belt back. And that's one of the few things on SmackDown that I had zero complaints about, because I like the new Bayley. I think she looks good, and I'm hoping that she can have a little bit more of a run this time, that maybe they don't yank it off of her at Survivor Series and go with Charlotte again. And by the time we get to WrestleMania, Charlotte's won the title 13 times. But, if WWE can kind of follow through a little bit with Bayley, see where it goes, then I think there's potential there. And now let's talk about the draft. Who got what? Now, I mentioned that Stephanie was out there on the stage announcing all the picks during all 3 rounds. So we'll just, instead of going round by round, I'll just tell you who each show got. So Raw, in the first pick, got Becky Lynch. They then followed it up with the OC as a team. So AJ Styles, Gallows, and Anderson remain a unit, and they're going to be on the Raw brand. Drew McIntyre, who's been out with an injury, was drafted to Monday Night Raw. Randy Orton has also been sent on over to Monday Night Raw, which I think is a good move for him. Ricochet is on Raw. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross both got drafted to Raw as well. Kevin Owens, which I think is a good move for him. Natalya, the Viking Raiders, who we kind of knew they'd get drafted to Raw because they have the title match this week, and the Street Profits, which if they would have drafted the Street Profits to SmackDown, I would have been like, what the fuck? They've been on Raw every single week. So the fact that they're staying on Raw is not very surprising. SmackDown in the draft gets Roman Reigns, The Fiend, Now, I was very much wrong about The Fiend. I thought that Bray Wyatt was a USA Network character. I thought it made more sense for Bray Wyatt to be on USA than Fox because I thought maybe USA could get away with a little bit more. I don't know. He's got that severed head lantern and shit. I don't want them to have to pull back on the Fiend character because they're on a major network. So that's why I thought maybe he'd stay on Raw. But here's an interesting idea. I'm asking you guys this. Do you guys think that he might be on both shows? Do you think that maybe they could do something weird where Funhouse Bray Wyatt is on Raw, but The Fiend is on SmackDown or some shit like that? I don't know. They might try to pull something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. But as of right now, The Fiend is on SmackDown, which did surprise me. SmackDown also gets Sasha Banks, Braun Strowman, Lacey Evans, The Revival, Lucha House Party, and Heavy Machinery. And Raw also got more picks because they're a 3-hour show and SmackDown's a 2. So for every 1 pick SmackDown got, Raw got 2 as a ambulance drives past me here. Hopefully that's not too loud. And like I said, WWE screwed up majorly by accidentally releasing the draft order before the show, which to me doesn't make me mad or upset me that I got spoiled. I find it funny. And typical WWE. Also, there were some notable omissions. Shout out to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful.com, who posted the list of notable omissions from the WWE draft. Now, there is going to be a selection of talent that does not get drafted. Apparently, via the rules, they can sign with whatever brand they want. So there will be a lot of late signings coming after the fact, but I think some of the wrestlers that are injured, WWE wants to keep their options open. I was mentioning that everybody should be drafted. Don't pull any funny shit. Draft Cena, draft Taker, but that's not really realistic if you don't want to paint yourselves into a corner booking-wise. So if you draft somebody to one brand, somebody that's out with an injury, and then a couple of months from now you got a different idea from them, but they're on the wrong brand, then you have to come up with a reason to move them to the other brand, and that's when shit gets convoluted. So having these guys, being held back until maybe they're healthy or they know what to do with them might be a good move. So the notable omissions that were written down, and there are probably going to be some more omissions than this, but the ones that I have here are Nia Jax, who's out with an injury. Ember Moon, I believe, is also injured. The Usos, who have just been absent from WWE lately. The Hardy Boys, Jeff just got himself in some more trouble. Nice job, Jeff. Keep it up. They're also not drafted on this draft. Naomi, The Ascension, Alicia Fox, Mickie James, Lars Sullivan, who I believe is out for a while with an injury, Ruby Riott, Mike and Maria Kanellis, Lana, Sheamus, and the Colognes. So Lana being on the list is weird because Lashley was drafted to SmackDown. I guess she's going to be coming with him, and I wouldn't be surprised if Rusev finds his way over there as well. And we also had some of the legends like The Undertaker, John Cena, The Big Show, and Ronda Rousey, who Triple H did mention in a media scrum right after the press conference for Saudi Arabia that Rousey is going to be coming back sooner rather than later. She's heavily featured on Total Divas and all of that. Don't know if the plan was still for her to have kids or not. It looks like she will be heading back to the WWE soon, and I can't wait to get her there. And if she does come back, I would expect her to probably be on Fox too. So expect her to go to SmackDown, which means we might not get that Becky and Ronda rematch right away, or they might save it for WrestleMania and figure out a way to get those two ladies to hook up at Mania. Becky might hold the title till Mania. And if she does and she faces Ronda Rousey, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work, but I guess it would be pretty obvious if Becky held the title till Mania. 1,000,000% she's dropping it to Ronda. So I don't know if I'd even like that because it would be so predictable. So maybe her holding the title till Mania is not a good idea, but she might. There's only a few pay-per-views left until then, so she's got to drop it to somebody. And we'll talk about the ratings too for SmackDown. I have the ratings written down here. Now the ratings were in, and they were down significantly from the previous week. So the first week on Fox drew nearly 4 million homes or 4 million viewers. So they had a 3.86 in week 1. They had a 2.89 on week 2. So that's down nearly 1 million. But what's interesting is that's still the second largest viewership of 2019. So even though it's a significant drop, it's more than what they were doing on the USA Network. So some fans were really laughing and thought WWE was going to be so disappointed by these ratings, but it's still the best SmackDown of the year aside from last week. So even though it dropped, it's still really good. So it's not that this rating really went down. It's just they had an incredibly high rating last week. You can expect that to go down, just like it did on AEW. They dropped nearly 500,000. for their second week. So that's to be expected and nothing to really freak out about. Hey, guess what, y'all? 205 Live happened after SmackDown. Didn't see the results, but did notice they did tape it. When I was in LA last Friday for SmackDown, they were supposed to tape 205 Live after the show, and that's another thing that makes you just hate WWE's arrogance. They canceled this thing last minute. Now, I was not paying attention. I was in fucking La La Land last week. I was just going up to the show to have a good time and to watch SmackDown. I didn't really know or care if they were taping 205 Live or not. I might not have even stayed for it. Had they taped it, we might have left. I don't know. So it wasn't a huge deal to me, but the fact that they just advertised it and then canceled it out from under the fans was weird. You know, we even stayed, you know, after SmackDown, the lights came up. I was even looking around, talking to the people in the seats around me, like, are they doing 205 Live? You know, and people were like, I think so. And then fans were just filing out. They told us all to go home. So I'm like, okay. Well, this week they decided to have 205 Live happen. A lot of rumors have been going around about the future of 205 Live, with the Cruiserweight title being now absorbed into NXT and being known as the NXT Cruiserweight title. Are they just going to absorb the entire 205 Live roster as well? Looks like some of them are going to be drafted to Raw or SmackDown. Some of them might be moved to NXT UK, and some of them might be moved to NXT. So 205 Live might not even be around for much longer, but I wish whatever they're going to do with it, they would make up their minds. So that pretty much is it for the draft. As far as who is left this coming Monday, the big names are the two champions, Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar. Based on where everybody is landing right now, I'm going to expect Seth to stay on Raw. But The Fiend is on SmackDown, and The Fiend attacked Seth on SmackDown, so it feels like their issue might not be over, but if they wind up on separate brands, maybe it is going to be over. I don't even know what to make of that situation. So based on Brock and Seth being involved, Becky's on Raw. They're probably going to keep her and Seth together. I think they're going to stay on their brands. I think Brock will stay on SmackDown. But we also have people like Andrade and guys like that all throughout the pools. But I don't really care where everybody winds up. This draft is a lot less interesting than I kind of thought it would be. I thought maybe they would try to get it right this time around with Fox involved and everything, but it just looks so hokey and dumb. And I'm curious what the plans are for Survivor Series. It does look like the champion versus champion thing is being done away with. As a matter of fact, this is something else that WWE did that's just straight up ludicrous. They announced after Hell in a Cell a Survivor Series rematch, a WWE Universal title rematch between Seth Rollins and The Fiend to take place at Survivor Series, which told us right there that the champion versus champion format is probably gone. But then they deleted the tweet. So now you don't know, like, well, what the fuck is going on in this company? Like, the right hand doesn't know what the left is doing. They're up their own asses. They're tweeting things and then changing their mind. They don't have their shit together at all. It doesn't seem like. So that's frustrating. And now it's like, well, what the hell are they going to do on Survivor Series now? You're about to split these brands up. Do you want to do that brand versus brand thing again? Remember last year? I was there in LA. Raw went like 7-1 or whatever. They just demolished SmackDown in like every match. So I don't see the point in doing that again. And I don't think the brands are going to be separate enough or separate long enough for the fans to even care about a brand versus brand battle, because Vince McMahon's stupid ass wild card rule this summer fucked that whole thing up. So you don't even need to see it now. So I kind of hope SmackDown just is booked like a normal pay-per-view. Maybe we get one Raw and SmackDown match. That might be fun, because previous to that, I think they were doing the one big Raw one versus SmackDown, and then everything else is regular matches. So maybe they do that. That's okay. But just limit it to one match instead of the entire pay-per-view being brand versus brand. And I don't think they're going to do the champion versus champion thing anymore, because that's probably going to put Seth Rollins in the ring with Brock again, and we can't have that. And then if Cain wins the belt, then it's going to be Seth and Cain, or I don't know. So none of that makes any sense. And I think the likelihood of Survivor Series being Raw versus SmackDown is very low at this point. Just about done with my notes here. I want to talk about a little bit of wrestling news, and I want to talk about NWA Power as well. Let me see if I missed any super chats in here. Pretty good audience. We had over 300 people in here for most of the day. My likes are still not very good. If y'all can at least get me up to 100 likes before I sign off here, I would appreciate it. Does not look like I missed. Oh, there's one more. I want to make sure I didn't miss any more. All right. Nope. Marcus, I got you. So the only one I'm missing is right down here from Spectra. Thank you, dude, for another $5. You are awesome. You write, quote, Charlotte shouldn't have won the title to drop it right away. Remember when Cena won his 16th title to drop it a month later and no one minded? Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I didn't see a ton of that on Twitter, but there were a few comments about that. And I got tagged in like 2 tweets where people were like bitching about Charlotte. And I'm like, God, talk about missing the point. You know, like I know everybody hates Charlotte and it's very fun to hate Charlotte. And it gives wrestling fans weird little rock hard boners to do that. But let's only do it like when it makes sense. You know, this was about Bayley. By your obsession with your Charlotte hate is taking away from Bayley. You know, so just there's a time and place for bitching about certain things, and the fans are just so misguided and misdirect so much of their anger. It's annoying. But yeah, to me, I was more interested in Bayley's look. You know, Bayley's new attitude, Bayley winning the belt. To me, it was Bayley, Bayley, Bayley. Charlotte was an afterthought. You know, but people were making her the focus of it. So don't complain that Charlotte is the center of attention when you yourself make her the center of attention. Just seems counterproductive. Anyway, I also want to talk about, because I did see this, I did not catch up on any Impact. I don't really watch Impact at all, or any of Japan either. By the way, shout out to our friends over there in Japan who I think at this moment are getting butt-fucked by a typhoon, and it looks scary as hell. So much love, and thoughts go out to everybody over there. Be safe. Hopefully everybody is getting through that. I've lived on the coast. I've been through plenty of hurricanes, but I've never been through a super typhoon. So I hope everybody stays safe, and I hope the damage and lives lost is minimal over there. We are thinking about our friends over in Japan, and all the American wrestlers that might be over there right now too. Speaking of other promotions, NWA Power debuted this past week on Tuesday. This is going to be streaming live on social media. Right now, I believe it's just Facebook and YouTube. And I checked out the whole show, and I loved it. They've been hyping this for a while, that they are going to recreate and bring back the old studio wrestling that used to be a main part of Atlanta for many, many years. And I think the TV studio that they're using is even right down the road from the old Atlanta studios from back in the 80s and shit. And they did an absolutely fabulous job of like recreating that aesthetic, recreating the ambiance and that feel and that backdrop of, you know, the flags in the back and the small arena, and the ring looked identical, you know, and the 2-man commentary booth, which included Jim Cornette, by the way, the interviews at the studio on the podium with great promos, simple but good. Every promo on the entire show was awesome because they were simple and there wasn't a whole lot to them. And it was just a nice kind of, it's something I think that wrestling needs, because wrestling is so big now. It's in this boom period, and it's so grand and overproduced, and AEW and NXT and Raw and Smackdown and WWE and everything that we see. We need this little fun, small alternative, kind of a throwback to the good old days. And I grew up in the Carolinas. I was lucky enough to watch this stuff weekly on TBS. I saw a lot of studio wrestling growing up, and I'm super lucky because I was born in the Detroit area. I was able to get AWA programming as well when I was real young. And then when I moved down to the Carolinas, I was able to get NWA programming and a lot of these studio shows, which were great because it had such a different vibe and feel to it. I love the interviews because you could hear the crowd reacting like individually. It wasn't like a roar. It was like individual voices shouting something out or laughing or reacting. And it's just something very nostalgic about it. And I loved it. And I thought NWA did a great job of just recreating that. And the matches were good. You know, I think the only thing different about the show from the old studio shows, it was just lit better. I think the production was just, you know, they didn't overdo it with the production. They kept it quite simple. Even the intro of the show that they did, I could have made on my video editor in about 30 minutes. So it was really, really simple. But I think that's the point. And I think that's kind of the look and the feel that they're going for there. And I just fell in love with it. I'm going to try to check that out as often as possible because it's very accessible and very easy to see on YouTube. And I even tweeted out how great they did. And I got a retweet from Jim Cornette about it, which was amazing. And The Rock even tweeted out his support, which I'll read here in a minute. But what I liked the most about the show, like I said, was the promos. The promos were outstanding. Eli Drake had a great promo. Eddie Kingston proves that he's one of the best. And one of my favorite spots, too, was Josephus was out there calling out Tim Storm. He comes out to the commentary booth and he's yelling, "Storm, Storm, Storm, come out here, Storm." And then out comes James Storm. fun little twist, James, who can cut a promo, we know that, gets on the mic and talks down to him. They brawl all over the place and would wind up having an impromptu match that Storm would win. We did get a Tim Storm promo as well, because Tim Storm was going to face Nick Aldis in the main event for the title. This would have been the third, I believe, match between the two that they've had. Kind of one more last chance for Tim Storm kind of thing. He cuts a promo before the match outside of the ring, and I don't know if he's been doing this very long or if it was just a one-time deal, but how long has Tim Storm been reciting Eminem lyrics in promos? This guy looks like somebody I would know in North Carolina. Just looks like a 55-year-old country dude, and he's just spitting out Eminem lyrics, which I thought was hilarious. That is my spirit animal right there. Tim Storm singing Eminem. Wound up having, I think, the best match he's had with Nick Aldis yet. I thought the match was pretty good. You got to remember, take in consideration Tim Storm's age and Nick Aldis' style. You're not going to get Eddie and Kurt Angle out of this match, but it was still really good, very classic NWA style of a match where Aldis won with a small package and put down Strowman and retained the title and put Strowman over. Did I say Strowman? Put Storm over after the match in the post-match interview there. His girl got taken out in the match. They're kind of teasing some dissension there. They had, some storyline progressions. They gave you a reason to want to check it out next week, which is really all you can do. So, they're not going to be on the level of an AEW or WWE or an NXT. But for the fans that just need something different or really miss the way wrestling used to be, like myself, I'm in my mid-40s, so this is something that speaks to me when I see wrestling like this, because this is what I grew up with. This is what I was lucky enough, to cut my teeth on, and learn to be a wrestling fan and learn about wrestling was all during shows like that. So I just, for the nostalgia feel alone, I'm going to be checking the show out as much as possible. I don't know if I'm going to come up here and give you full reviews on it or anything like that, but I'm definitely going to be watching it, and it's worth a look. So if you have not taken a look at NWA Power, 3 R's on the end of that for some reason, give it a look because it's pretty awesome. The Rock, as busy as he is making movies, he even tweeted out his appreciation and support for the show. He wrote, "Congrats, Jim Cornette, that is, and the boys, crew, etc. Stumbled across this show last night and enjoyed it. I grew up in the territories and started my career at Channel 5 in Memphis, so I have a lot of love and respect for small-scale crowd TV shows. Cool vintage feel. Keep working hard, boys." So the fact that The Rock even reached out and said, you know what, that looks really good, I think is awesome. The Rock, he literally did grow up in the territories. He was a little kid running around with his dad and was probably in that environment, in that setting, lots as a youngster, and then kicking off his career, on the Memphis studio shows as well, when they would interview Flex Cavana, wasn't that his name back in the day? So it's a good time to be a wrestling fan. Yes, WWE has really wanted me to tear what's left of my hair out all week long. But all in all, despite WWE's classic, monumental fuck-ups that they've been giving us all week, it's still a really good time to be a wrestling fan. We had a lot of negatives this week, but we had a lot of pros. The negatives was the clusterfuck Hell in a Cell, the hugely disappointing finish, and not even having the pay-per-view booked until day of, the horrific Monday Night Raw that was standing in your way of the draft that didn't even need to be there. Stupid final segment with Braun Strowman and Tyson Fury. Smackdown did not live up to the hype. It was not that great of a show, despite that you were having a draft on that show. So WWE gave us a whole bunch of things to be disappointed about, but we got a lot of positives. We got a great AEW Dynamite show. They're off to a great start. 2 for 2 in my eyes. They've had 2 TV shows right so far, and they've both been good. So as long as they can continue on that trend, Wednesdays will be fun. We know we can count on NXT. They're going to give us everything that we need. And then we were pleasantly surprised on Tuesday with NWA Power. So there's a lot to be excited about as a wrestling fan, despite WWE's problems, despite what they do to us. It's still a good time to be a fan because we have options. And WWE doesn't have us by the balls. Could you imagine if they gave us that shit and we didn't have NXT and we didn't have AEW and we didn't have anything else? Even, Japan would be there. But imagine if we had nothing else here in the States. No NXT, no AEW, no Ring of Honor, no Impact, no NWA. This was it. We were forced. If we wanted to watch wrestling, we were going to be forced to watch this. So that's why competition and having options is important. Because when you have and you are given shit by this company, you have a chance to go elsewhere to find your professional wrestling content. And we have that now. So to all the haters out there, I just say you got options. If I get frustrated enough, I just won't watch it either. Well, I kind of have to because of the YouTube channel. But it's a good thing that we have these other options, because the more and more WWE disappoints us, the more fans are going to start looking elsewhere for their entertainment. I did want to mention some wrestling news. Actually, I don't really have much written down for that. I mentioned Triple H talking about Ronda Rousey's return. There has been some more rumors about Edge potentially coming back. He has announced that he's going to be leaving the Edge and Christian podcast. I believe family life is forcing him out of that. I don't even know what the latest on him and Beth Phoenix is. Last I heard, they were living in one of my favorite cities in North Carolina, Asheville, which is just absolutely beautiful. Thought it was an awesome place for the two of them to set up shop. But Beth has been doing commentary for so long in NXT now. I don't know if they've made the move down to Orlando or not. So I don't know what's going on in his personal life. There has been some talk about him coming back ever since he delivered that spear to Elias at SummerSlam. There's been talk about him coming back. And with Saudi Arabia right on the horizon, that was my big fear, is that if he was going to come back, he'd be coming back to work a match on that show. Doesn't look like that is the case now, unless they really hotshot an angle to get him booked in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping that if he does come back and he does get in the ring, it won't be there, and it'll be something significant here in the States. I would love for him to be a entrant in the Royal Rumble. How cool would that be? Just have him come out there randomly and enter. Apparently he has been medically cleared, but WWE's doctors haven't cleared him. It's been a lot of up and down with the rumors, but I definitely think there's smoke to this fire, and we're going to keep an eye on it and see what the latest with Edge is and how this progresses. But if he made some sort of a return in the Royal Rumble, that would be super fun. I also talked about Jeff Hardy's DUI arrest. I was not home last weekend to do the Winged Eagle to really talk about that, and I mentioned it during my Hell in the Cell review, and I think maybe even on Monday on the reaction, and that's not good news at all. Jeff Hardy, this is now 3 times in the last year. He's had public intoxication. He had a DUI a year ago where he ran his car off the road and ran into a fence or something, and now he's got another one. And man, he's got to have a good lawyer, because he seems to be avoiding jail time in all of this, and WWE never does anything with the Usos and Hardy. They don't have anything, I don't even think, written into their wellness policy involving alcohol. I mean, aside from maybe don't wrestle drunk, I don't know what else is in there. So, I mean, I just think there should be something. And I know they're independent contractors, which is why WWE consistently and constantly releases that bullshit statement, so-and-so is responsible for their own actions. But I still think there needs to be something to where, look, if you can't keep your shit together and TMZ is posting mugshots of you several times a year, you need to be punished. Matt Hardy doesn't seem to be happy about this whole situation. So, Jeff, I worry about him. I kind of thought that he'd be over this. Matt, to his credit, who also went down a dark road a few years ago, for him, it looked like there was no coming back for as bad as he got. And look at the way he's turned himself around, with his life and his family and his kids and everything now. He's had this great redemption story, and his brother shows signs of it sometimes, but can never really pull it off all the way. It's a shame. But Jeff Hardy, I don't have much sympathy for him. Sometimes I kind of wish these guys would get tossed in jail for a few months. Maybe that'll scare him straight. You're going to go from your beautiful, gorgeous Hardy compound to a jail cell. It might straighten you out. Throw Jeff Hardy in jail. I mean, Sonny's been there forever. How come Jeff Hardy's not? And I love Jeff. I don't want to see him go to jail or anything. I don't want anything bad to have happen to Jeff Hardy at all. But how are you going to learn, if you just pay a lawyer to get you out of everything? So I'm going to scroll down here through my notes and make sure there's nothing I omitted or forgot to say or mention. And I'm going to go back over here to the chat as well and see if you guys have anything you want me to discuss before I head out of here. And just as a reminder, for the schedule this week, you're going to get me back on Monday night for my Monday Night Raw reaction, and I plan to release a Halloween Havoc retro pay-per-view review on Tuesday. So keep a lookout for that. Go down here and check and see if I have any more super chats to answer. And I'll give you guys a hello. Jeff Harvey. Oh, yeah. Oh, shout out to Mike Adamley. I know he's not doing well either. I remember hearing about his diagnosis of dementia a couple of years ago, which is not good. And also Dean Malenko, who apparently is suffering from Parkinson's, which sucks. I remember when I briefly flirted with the idea of going to wrestling school, I looked into it enough to where I wrote a couple of letters, and the school that I was most interested in was the Malenkos in Florida, and got the paperwork back, how much it was going to cost, the deposit, and all of that, but in the end, chose not to do it. But Malenko was the man. He's currently serving and working as an agent and producer, I think, in AEW, and really wish him the best here on the channel. So I think that is going to be it. We went nearly 2 hours tonight. So yeah, this was a hugely long podcast this week. I'll go back to the chat here because I think I've got a super chat coming in and see if there's anything else I should mention before I leave. But I think this is pretty much going to do it. Reese Jones, thank you for $5, dude. You are the man. With Bayley and Sasha both on SmackDown and Bayley as champion, that has had I can't read as a champion that has a build to a championship match between the two written all over it. Okay, I think I see what you're saying there. Yes, I talked about that earlier for sure. If you're going to keep them on the same brand, keep them together for a little while because they're both kind of heels now. So I don't want to see them button heads yet. But with one of them being the champion, how can you not? So yes, that match is on the horizon. But what I would like to see them do, Reese, if possible, and this is a big if. Daniel Bryan said something similar a year ago when somebody asked him if they could build a match between him and The Miz at WrestleMania. And he's like, do you trust the WWE to plan things out that long term? Do you trust them to book that far in advance and to actually follow through with it? He's like, I don't. Same goes for Bayley and Sasha here. I would like them, if they're going to do a feud between the two in a program, do that for WrestleMania, just based on their history, based on what took place last WrestleMania and everything that's happened since then. I think that would be a good match to do. Problem is, 6 months away, and WWE has zero patience. Not only will that match probably not happen at WrestleMania, it will probably happen in 2 weeks on SmackDown just because they're idiots. Yeah, I think that is it. No, Orlo, I do not smoke cigarettes, even though I do cough from time to time. The reason I don't smoke cigarettes is I was reading this article in this obscure magazine, and I didn't know if there should be any truth to it or not. I wasn't sure, but as I read the article, it implied that cigarettes were bad for you. So I was like, if that's true, I probably shouldn't smoke them. Don't know if it's true or not, but I chose not to just to be safe. So anyway, yeah, that's going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank all of you guys for hanging out this afternoon on Saturday. Let me know what you think about these Saturday podcasts. This is going to be the format going forward. It kind of has to be with SmackDown being on Friday, and they're usually going to come later in the day like this because I work late at night, and then I got to watch the shows. I got to make my notes. I got to prep and get up here to do this podcast, and I'm going to shoot for 3 p.m. every Saturday. If that time changes, I'll be sure to let you guys know ahead of time, but keep in mind, the schedule that I'm going to attempt to stick to is the Winged Eagle every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Like I said, retro reviews are going to start ramping up. I also plan on coming up once a week, maybe on Wednesdays or something during the day, maybe for some news briefs or something. So all of the YouTubers right now are currently working out their new schedules because of WWE jumbling everything up. So not everything has fallen into place yet, but what I plan to do is do my Raw reaction on Monday, come up and do one of 3 videos in the middle of the week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere. It will either be a mic drop on some sort of big news that might drop on Monday Night Raw. It might be a news brief. I want to kind of do just a short news segment where I come up live, probably be off camera, and just read some wrestling news, talk about the goings on in wrestling. Or it'll be like a retro pay-per-view review, which I'm starting to do more of, and I've got a couple on the calendar for November as well. So that's the plan that I want to have going forward. Reaction on Monday, midweek video of some kind, could be one of 2, 3, or 4 type of videos. This day in history is possible too. And then do the Winged Eagle on Saturdays. And then if I can give you guys more content in between, smaller stuff, I will do that. But that's kind of what we're looking at right now. 3 to 4 videos a week. And then for pay-per-views, of course, I'm going back to my pay-per-view reviews. So after a pay-per-view on Sundays, after Survivor Series, I'll be up here following the show with a live, full, complete review of the whole thing. So that's the format that I want to use and go and be consistent with on the channel as we go through here the rest of the year. And hopefully by the time we get to 2020, that schedule will be, streamlined and I'll be used to it and all of that. But WWE throws us YouTubers a curveball every time they decide to put shows on different nights because it fucks up our podcast schedule. So this Winged Eagle podcast may only last as long as SmackDown on Fox does. Who knows? But anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Again, thank you for joining. Thank you for hanging out. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will catch you this Monday night during Monday Night Raw for my live Raw reaction. So make sure you're here on YouTube to join me for that. Have a good rest of your night, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.